Hi, I'm Greg Schaffer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment. My guest today is Andrew Kalat. He is the owner of Rotation Speed Consulting, an independent security consultant, speaker, writer, and the self-described award-losing co-host of the long-running Defensive Security podcast. He has spent nearly 3 decades helping organizations solve security challenges with leadership roles spanning SalesLoft, US Bank, Elevon, Checkpoint Software, Accuvant, and many others. Along the way, he's built security programs, led engineering and operations teams, managed multi-million-dollar security budgets, advised enterprise organizations, and helped translate risk into business decisions. He's also a private pilot, which we'll touch on in a bit because I am as well too, although inactive. He's an author and one of the more recognizable voices in the cybersecurity podcasting community. We'll talk about that in a moment as well too. We'll also talk about his journey through the industry and also all sorts of other great, interesting stuff. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Greg. I need to hire you as my marketing guy. That was amazing.
You know what? I can subcontract that because my marketing person is ChatGPT.
Hey, that works. But thanks so much for having me. And great to be on the show.
Yeah, we'd love to start out as we usually do. I want to hear your story about how and why you got started in this really crazy industry and what led you to where you're at today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and it's been an interesting journey, and it's been a while since I've really reflected. But I started in the early '90s. I'm old enough that I had single line modems when I started, and I was
amen, brother. Me too. Yes.
Yeah. Single line BBSs, exactly. I remember when US Robotics had a deal for sysops that you could get a faster modem cheaper. So I started my own bulletin board just to get a cheaper modem. And
the US Robotics 56K.
Yep. So early days, I had no idea what I was doing, man. I was just the weird kid without any friends who discovered a whole community online with bulletin boards, and it changed my life. Yeah. And so I grew up in Detroit area, and there was a very active BBS scene up there. And then very slowly the internet came around. And I remember those early days of the internet when we first got on the internet via modems with a piece of software called KA9Q that was built for packet radio data transmission. But later, as I learned about TCP/IP, it made sense. It was TCP/IP packets being used. So I kind of accidentally fell into this industry. I actually grew up, we talked about a little bit about being a pilot. I thought I was going to be an airline pilot growing up. And then I just found this amazing world of technology and started tinkering and building computers and selling computers at trade shows, and then got my first job selling software at Electronics Boutique. And then from there, just started working for a small, what we would now call an MSSP in Detroit, called Netrex, which was a managed firewall provider. And this was the days that the way it worked is they had a data center and they ran serial T1 links or smaller out to the various customers and brought all their traffic to our data center, ran them through some checkpoint firewalls back in the version 1, version 2 days, and out to the internet from there. That was the early days. And it was great. I learned a lot about troubleshooting and helping customers and all that great stuff that comes from doing kind of help desk type work. And that company got bought by a company in Atlanta called ISS, which eventually got bought by IBM. And that moved me down to Atlanta. And I came down to Atlanta in 2000 with that ISS acquisition.
You are like me. You're one of those damn Yankees. You moved down, you stayed. Yes, because I came from New York and moved down to Knoxville, Tennessee back 30 years ago.
Well, I think after 20 years, you lose the damn, and then you're just a Yankee.
Oh, okay.
What am I told? Right. At least in Atlanta. It could be different rules in Nashville. But so I worked at ISS, which was great. It was a startup. It was the .com era. We built data centers. We had this huge MSSP opportunity, and it was an amazing time until the .com boom kind of failed. And but still learned a ton from there. I went to Checkpoint and started doing sales engineering management for Checkpoint because I'd run Checkpoint firewalls for so long in so many different jobs, and was there for a bunch of time and learned how to do the more soft side of the business, and learned how to work with customers and traveled around and helped them, which was great. And it really filled in as this very poor socialized introvert, getting me out of my shell and doing more public speaking and forcing me to learn how to talk to people, which I found very helpful. I didn't think so at the time, but it was super helpful. And then after Checkpoint, I started dabbling with startups. I was at a couple that didn't go, a couple that, were okay, a couple that failed. And I'll tell you, my failures taught me probably more than my successes when it comes to business.
Yeah, they usually do in business and other aspects of life, right?
Yeah, no kidding. And bounced around then went to Accuvant, which at the time, now they're called Optiv, but they were a VAR. So it was really interesting going to a VAR from vendors and such. Now I've got a whole suite of technologies to talk to customers about and figure out, hey, what are you trying to do? What's good? What's bad? And really bringing all that to the table. Of course, it's still interesting how much, to be honest, pressure you get to sell certain vendors over others. Maybe not the best solution, but that's just the way the game is played sometimes. And then I ended up at Elevon, which was a smaller 3,500 employee credit card processing company. So I was doing security work for them, started as a principal security architect, moved up into leadership roles there where, now we're dealing with PCI and credit cards and all that. And that got rolled into US Bank. And then I was working at US Bank. And ultimately was there for about 5 years and then wanted to get back into small company land and went to a software company called SalesLoft, which was just kind of starting to blow up. It was just at the beginning of the COVID era, and it got real big, real fast. It was building software for sales folks, and kind of came in when there was a 2-person team and built that to 8 people, a whole huge security department. Ultimately, they got bought by Vista Private Equity, and I actually just left there just a couple weeks ago just to kind of take a breath and decompress and do some side work and consulting. And among that, started a podcast, wrote some books, did some public speaking, a lot of stuff. So probably a long answer to a short question.
Well, I wish you would find a way to do more stuff. No, it sounds great that you've obviously got a passion in the field, and you and I share something. First of all, I started out. Did I read somewhere that at one point in time that you were you a mechanical engineering student?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I was reading something else, but the commonality between us then doesn't have to do with that, but it has to do with being a private pilot. I believe you got your private pilot license in the early 90s. I did as well too. I've often thought that there is a significant corollary. There are some between how we approach flying and how we can approach information security. And I'd like to hear your views on that. And then I'll add some as well too, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I like to say, how when you meet a pilot, they'll tell you. And the biggest challenge is if you meet somebody who's a vegan CrossFit pilot. They don't know what to tell you first. And there's a lot of just tension.
The only way they're vegan CrossFit is because they tell you.
Right. But no, I absolutely agree. That, and if you look at the aviation industry, and I'm not a professional pilot, though I've got good buddies who are, they have such a robust, mature risk management culture that we could learn a lot from. It feels like information security keeps trying to reinvent that wheel. And you look at how aviation accidents occur, it's rarely one cause. There's usually a number of systems in place, especially for larger commercial operations, that have a bunch of checks and balances that typically will catch a problem before it results in an accident or an incident. And normally when you really dig into what causes an accident, it's a bunch of failures that line up in the worst possible way. And I think the same often applies to InfoSec. And I think also the concepts from aviation make a lot of sense. They care about fatigue. They care about checklists. They care about the best way to do something consistently and routinely. And they care about studying their incidents and learning from them, which we in InfoSec try to do, but we also have this push to be very secretive because of legal aspects amongst our breaches and such. So I do find there's a lot of pilots in information security. I think it scratches the same itch. And I think there's a lot you can learn from being thoughtful, systematic. And the one thing that I think really helped me is being calm in a crisis. When you're flying an aircraft on your own, especially for the first time, and I'm sure you remember your first solo like I do, that
Yeah.
cockpit's never felt bigger. And you realize, wow, if I
Yeah,
screw this up.
I had to retire that pair of underwear, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think every pilot, I heard this from a great instructor once. You start with a bucket of luck and an empty bucket of wisdom. The bucket of luck is full. You're
Uh-huh.
trying to fill that bucket of wisdom before you run out of the bucket of luck. And I think that applies in information security as well as aviation.
Yeah.
And you make mistakes and you learn from them.
Yeah, and hopefully you've done enough risk management that you have enough compensating control so that your mistakes don't end up being a fatal one. I mean, you mentioned the first solo. The only thing I really remember from that, it was in Knoxville at Mickey Tyson, which was a class C, I believe, at the time. I don't think they do those classes anymore. I don't know. It's been 15 years since I've flown. No, it's been 17 years. But I remember thinking, it's like the first time when I had a chance to like actually stop and think, it was like, okay, you go through the checklist, you get clearance to take off, and you take off and you establish yourself in the pattern. And I'm like, I guess I'm on downwind, and I'm like, that's going, for those who aren't pilots, that's going the opposite direction to the runway where you're kind of circling in the pattern to go down to land. And that's when I thought to myself, I have no choice. I have to land this thing. I mean, gravity is going to take me down one way or the other. And that was a bit of a freak out mode. And I do think that in information security, we do have sometimes that freak out mode when we're in the middle of an incident where it's just like, one way or the other, this incident is going to resolve. But I have to do all I can with all my training to bring the incident down with as minimal risk as possible.
Yeah, agreed. And staying calm, staying thoughtful. You can't panic. You can't give up. You can't pull over. You have to get that plane on the ground.
And you can't start making up things on the fly, no pun intended.
Right.
You have to actually, that's why we practice checklists. We have the engine out checklist. We have all these other checklists as well too. And to your point, what you said before, and I totally agree. It's like you look at aviation accidents, and it's not one thing that causes it. It's the last thing. Okay, well, the last thing is that the plane impacted the ground in a most unnatural manner. Okay, I get that.
Right.
But it's like because everything's going to come down eventually. But how did you get to that point? A lot of times they say fuel starvation. That's one of the more common ones. Or sometimes it's like flying into IMC, which is instrument meteorological conditions, and otherwise known as cloud. VFR pilot flying into that, I think the number I remember hearing is like 178 seconds of life. Once you fly into that, if you've had no instrument training, you're done because you don't know how to fly in there. So all these things, well, what are the decision points that lead up to it? It's like, why did you fly when there was a chance for weather like that? Why did you do blah, blah, blah? What was your backup plan? And the same thing with information security. It's like, that's why we have compensating controls. That's why we have layered security. So I do think that a lot can be drawn from that as well.
Yeah, I agree. But you touched on a really good point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You touched on a really good point too, which is that we have in aviation pre-thought out, pre-planned, pre-practiced procedures for most emergency situations.
Business continuity, disaster recovery in the air.
Right. And we train them extensively, hopefully. It's one thing I think we don't do well in information security. Like we say we do, we say we have an instant response plan. We say we have a playbook. But what I've often seen happen is it's written and updated once a year. You don't have time to practice it. You don't have time to drill it. It's not intuitive. That muscle memory isn't there. And one thing that we know from aviation is stress makes it harder to think objectively.
Yes.
And so one of the reasons I think that it makes sense in aviation and in information security to have these pre-planned, pre-decided decision trees and reaction trees is because you're already under stress. This takes some of that stress away. We know in a peacetime environment, we've made a decision. Okay, we've lost the engine. Immediately pitch for best glide, which gives me the most amount of time to figure out what to do. Okay, find a place to land. Okay, I head for that. Okay, now start trying to restart the engine. Now do this. Now we'll do this. Now do this. As opposed to, my engine just quit. I don't know what to do. Well, let me think about it for a minute. And you're losing precious time. And so I think that that I think very much I've seen in my career on incident response is, and it's sometimes frustrated by executive leadership who haven't bought into that written incident response plan, that they start making it up on the fly. And
and if you bring that emotion into it when you're making it up on the fly, you've lost an awful lot there because you're not thinking clearly. It's the same thing in the air. Another thing to draw out this flying analogy that you made me think of as you were talking through the engine out best glide. Sometimes we practice things that we don't ever plan to use, but we want to get to the edge to see what it's like so that we know to avoid it. And what I'm thinking about here is spin training, or at least getting close to a spin. So for the non-pilot folks out there, a spin is basically when you enter into an uncontrolled stall. A stall is when you lose airlift over the wings. Normally, if you enter into a controlled stall, meaning that you've got your rudder set right and all that, and your ball is in the middle for those of us with steam gauges experience. The airplane's going to lose lift on the wings symmetrically, and it's going to fall forward, and then the airplane will fly itself. But if you lose lift over the wings asymmetrically, one wing will fall over the other, and you enter into this spin, which involves a little bit more like steps in order to recover. You have to opposite rudder, then get to the point where you're going forward and without the spin part, and then the airplane will recover. All that is great and everything, but the problem with that is that we practice that not so that we can recover from it, but because we want to learn what it feels like right before it happens. Because the only time when that happens is when you're flying really slow and making turns. And the only time when you're flying really slow and making turns outside of practicing is when you're in the pattern. And if you get into a spin in the pattern, you can't recover. There's not enough time. So there's not enough altitude. So a corollary to information security is that if we can have enough monitoring in place where we know, okay, we've seen now where something has happened, it's gotten us just to this edge. We know now we've hit a danger point, and we have to pull back and do something. We have to stop our continuation of whatever it is we're doing and right the ship, so to speak. So
yeah. 100%. And I think you touched on something else. And sorry for all the non-pilots. You get two pilots in a room, we inevitably start talking to you.
That's all this podcast is going to be about, is pilotage and InfoSec.
But it's interesting. Like, I think there's so many good correlations here. Like, when certain failures start to stack up, you may be able to sustain one failure or two failures, 3 or 4 failures, then you get a bad situation. I think the same thing applies to InfoSec. Man, I've gotten this weird incident or a weird log event here. Somebody's coming from a weird IP at a weird time. And you start to get these pre-problem indicators that in and of themselves, if I could see them early enough, I can react to them early enough, I could probably stop the spin into the ground. But it's knowing what matters and what doesn't. And I think one of the trouble we have in information security is we have too much information coming at us, and what matters and what doesn't matter. And the same can happen in aviation. You can get pilots vapor locking because they've got too much information saturation coming at them. And I think I've seen that same thing happen with SOCs and incident response. Okay, what are the indicators I care about? Which instrument gauges do I really want to look at here to figure out what's going on? You mentioned VMC and IMC, which is pilots who are flying visually against the horizon, flying into a cloud. And one of the weird things that happens is we're built to be on the ground, and we're built to have gravity go that way.
Right.
And in flight, because of the forces of flight, you're screwing with your inner ear. So your body thinks you might be in one attitude or condition, and the aircraft is in a completely different one. So you've got to learn to trust those instruments.
Yeah, absolutely.
And ignore your gut. And I think the same thing should be applied to information security, which is not that your gut is wrong, but it has to inform good, strong reasoning for why you're taking the actions you're taking.
You have to trust your instruments in InfoSec, whatever some of the other things are telling you, right? Because you're right. For our non-pilotage friends out there, it's like one of the things that a pilot in their training will do, and this is more of a demonstration thing, is just the instructor will say, okay, I'm going to put you under this hood so that you can't see outside, and now I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and all you got to do is keep the airplane flying straight and level. That's all you got to do. You don't even have to have the hood, actually. You just close your eyes and fly straight and level. And so the instructor will just sit there and whistle and chew gum and do whatever for a little while. And usually about a minute and a half, 2 minutes later, the instructor will say, okay, now take a look at your instruments. And you'd be surprised to know that you are in a downward spiral. And you just didn't know it, because the centrifugal force is taking the place of that gravity pointing down. You still think you're sitting in your seat. And in information security and cybersecurity, if you get to that point of complacency where you have not had enough inputs and you are relying upon your gut feeling and your intuition that you think everything is fine, you're going to ride that everything is fine straight into a major breach, right into the ground. So I agree with you on that. That's a great point.
Here's the thing I think is challenging for some of us in information security, is especially as private pilots or even as commercial pilots, we always have the option of scrubbing the flight. If my minimum equipment checklist is down, or I've lost a key instrument, I do my pre-flight, I do my run-up, something doesn't look right, I can turn that plane around and take it back to the hangar and shut it down and go home.
Mm-hmm.
We don't often have that choice in business information security.
No.
We still have to do the risky thing sometimes. And so there's a level of, because it's human life, of the ability to say no to a flight without much consequence. Although pilots have this thing called get-home-itis, which they fight against, where they try to take a riskier flight than they should, when they have clear personal limits of, look, this crosswind's too high, this visibility is too low, I shouldn't fly, but I've got this wedding tomorrow I want to get to. So that pressure in a business environment is usually 10 times worse. Now, usually life is not on the line, usually. But often we are advisors. We're not pilots in command from an information security perspective.
We don't have the authority to bring the business to a stop because we think that there's an imminent information security thing happening.
Right. And then it becomes, okay, how fly the plane as far into the crash as you can, right? Or advise and understand that you may have to accept risk you're uncomfortable with. The tough part, I think, for us as transitioning from pilots to information security is a pilot. When you're a pilot in command, you are the complete final authority of that aircraft and decision of that aircraft. When we are doing information security for business, we are essentially advisors.
That's right. And that's a very good point. I never really thought about it that way, but you are completely correct.
And it's tough.
It's very tough, particularly since you don't have that control. One other thing that you mentioned too, since we'll just finish out this with keeping on the whole flying thing, because it's a great analogy. I've never delved this deep into it. You talked about how we do a good job with postmortem, and sometimes it's actual postmortem in the flying world, unfortunately, with accidents. The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, they put out preliminary and final reports on every aviation incident in the United States. I get that in one of my feeds regularly. It's interesting to read because you learn from that, but we don't have something equivalent in information security. And I get it. I understand why, is because you don't really want to have that out there. The companies don't want to have that information out there, but it would be good to have some sort of a clearinghouse for information that has been made public for something like that. And I think that some elements of that exist, but it's certainly not as ubiquitous or as thorough as the NTSB reports.
I agree completely. It's again, sorry for the non-pilots. There's something called a NASA report where if you're at a pilot, you screw up, you do something you're not supposed to, you fly into the wrong airspace, you violate some rule.
Well, maybe.
Never. No.
Oops. You ever have an F-16 off your wing? I have, but that's another story.
That's a free air show. Anyway.
Wait. Before you continue, I have to say that I was a passenger in there, and it was a demonstration flight for a plane I was thinking about buying, and the guy violated his own airspace. He should have known about locally. Yeah, Montgomery, Alabama, and there's a base like right near there, and he was lining up to land at the base instead of the field that he took off from. And I'm looking out the window, and there's an F-16. It's like, hi.
So wow.
Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would love to hear that story. We'll have to get together over a beer and trade aviation stories.
You're talking about the NASA report, so
yes. So the idea is that if you self-report, hey, I screwed up, it comes with amnesty. It comes with a get out of jail free card. In general, you're not going to get the FAA breathing on your neck, pulling your cert, etc. the problem that I think we have in information security is there's no real get out of free card to have the amnesty to share all the details because of all the legal liability involved. I can tell you, I was involved last year at SalesLoft in a massive breach that got a ton of news. And somebody came in and stole a bunch of OAuth tokens and went to Salesforce and scraped a bunch of our customers' data from Salesforce. All this is public. I could talk about that. What's really fascinating is because I was in the middle of it, and I was reading, again, all the press about us, and I saw what we were legally allowed to disclose and what we weren't. It wasn't that we were hiding anything, but our lawyers had such a stranglehold on the details we could release because of all the legal aspects of this, that the news about our breach was limited in facts and certainly did not disclose all the things that other people could have learned from, unlike an NTSB report, right? So the information security news organizations of the world, journalists of the world, do a great job of writing about these, but it's funny being inside of one of these and seeing, hey, here's what our lawyers say we can release, which is all accurate, but also very limited. And then what I know from the inside of exactly what happened and why and where we screwed up and what went wrong, where we did well, that's the stuff I'd love all of us in the industry to be more able to disclose, but the legal liability aspects that make it very difficult.
Yeah,
And
because with the NCSB reports and the NASA reports, I mean, there's like details about this is what we found. This is the maintenance record, because everything that's done on an airplane and everything that's done with regards to a flight, assuming that you have filed correctly and all that, you know, there is a huge documentation trail with regards to it. But well, we could swim around in this rabbit hole for a very long time. I really didn't anticipate the entire discussion to be focused on the piloting and the InfoSec, but it's amazing the parallels there. But there, you know, piloting, whether you're a private pilot or you're a commercial pilot, it's a stressful field. And certainly another parallel is that information security and cybersecurity is stressful as well. And I like to encourage folks to decompress from the stress as healthy as possible. Now, I've been very transparent on this podcast that one of the things that I used to do is that I used to do 12-ounce curls to decompress. I mean, not a serious problem, but then again, I could have found healthier things. And based on when we're recording this a few days later, but with the schedule when this is going to drop, this is actually my third-year anniversary of being alcohol-free. So I do other things, like, for example, I'm crazy into mountain biking right now to help decompress, which is nuts. And I'm going to do a 10-mile race tomorrow, road race running. So I've gotten more into the fitness side to help decompress. But love hearing other people's stories. What's one of the things, Andrew, you do to decompress from the stress of cyber and flying?
Yeah. Well, you know, what's amazing is flying was a de-stressor for me from InfoSec, because when you're flying, you have no choice but to focus solely on that event.
Yes. Now, but it brings its own level of stress too. But I totally agree.
It does.
You know.
And by the way, if you're too stressed from your day job, you shouldn't fly. That dictates your skill set.
Particularly if you've had a few 12-ounce curls.
I will tell you right now, I'm fighting a bunch of burnout. So this is a very topical thing for me. I'm trying to get back into fitness. I find personally going to the gym and doing 45 minutes of cardio, watching a movie on the iPad helps a ton. I play video games. I like to go to the gun range. I like to travel. My wife and I are trying to hit every state park in Georgia, spend time with her, that kind of stuff. And I read, watch a lot of movies and TVs, but I'm trying to, I've been out of balance. I'll be very honest. I'm trying to get back in balance. So for me, it's a job, especially in a leadership role in InfoSec, can take everything you give. And so I got a little too far to the other side. And so I'm trying to get back to my hobbies and the things that help me de-stress. So that's my approach.
And that's the biggest risk that we have, particularly since it seems like, I think both InfoSec and pilot, they tend to draw like the folks that are in there are type A type personalities. I mean, we tend to want to do a very fine, good, complete job and be at the top of our game all the time, and it's just not sustainable. So I mean, I think that's great advice to just take a step back and decompress and unwind from the burnout. And because the more that you burn out, the more that you have to kind of spool back a bit. So, but once you get post burnout, what future plans you got coming up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm kind of doing some consulting work right now, and you as a pilot probably will understand the play on the name of my consulting company, Rotation Speed Consulting. So that's when you get enough speed to take off. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm being a plane nerd, but so I'm doing that, and right now I'm just kind of regrouping, but I'm also looking to get back into when the time is right. I'm spending time learning AI. I'm spending time learning all the crazy stuff about the security of AI, but ultimately, whether it's through consulting, small businesses, medium businesses, or whatever, I'm trying to figure out how I can help and use the 30 years or so I've got to figure out ways to be useful to a company and ultimately try to find a mission worth supporting. I'm fortunate in my career where the money's not as big a deal as it is, do I believe in what we're doing? I don't know what that is right now. I'm trying to figure that out again. I've gotten so burnt out. I'm trying to find that excitement again. So that's kind of where I'm at, to be completely honest with you.
Well, I mean, it sounds good. I hope that you find that excitement again. I mean, certainly if you go down the AI rabbit hole and starting to learn that, I'll caution you because I have entered into the world of vibe coding myself, not asking Claude to write code for me and then I just regurgitate it. I've been using ChatGPT and Bubble I wrote an app to help manage my consulting business, which actually is kind of like cool. So it's like, but now I've become like a nerd in that area too. And then the type A personality starts coming into play. It's like, oh, I got to fix this. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I'm like, oh gosh, now I need to decompress from what I was decompressing with. So, well, Andrew, I'll tell you, this has been an absolutely fun conversation. I love it. It's like, we probably need to schedule another time to chat more about InfoSec and guns. I wanted to touch on firing and proper gun safety and this and that and the parallels with InfoSec, but we don't have the time for that today. But I'll be thinking about it. I'll be next out on the range on Monday, and I'll be thinking about this. Actually, when this podcast drops, I was on the range the day before, so it's that temporal thing with recording and then dropping and all that. It just drives me.
Happy to chat more anytime, and I'd love to.
Well, I appreciate you being on, and everybody, stay secure.